Okay, well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Abby Edens, and I am the Director of Education at the National WWII Museum. And today I want to welcome you to our program of the Ghost Army, telling the story of the combat con artists through the exhibit and the collections. And today's program is made possible through our sponsor, which is AARP Louisiana. Today, I am pleased to have my colleague, Jenney Fazande, Director of Exhibits at the National WWII Museum, and she and her team are in charge of designing and creating the exhibits at the museum, as well as installing and deinstalling our museum's exhibits at other museums across the country. Jenney will be speaking today about how she and her team took the information and the research from our curatorial department on the Ghost Army exhibit to create an immersive experience for our visitors. Then we're going to take a virtual tour, and that is going to be with curator Larry Decuers to see some of the objects within the actual Ghost Army exhibit. Afterwards, we're going to have some time for some Q&A. So without further ado, I'm going to be turning this over to Jenney.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jenney Fazande, the Director of Exhibits at the National WWII Museum. And today we're going to talk about Ghost Army and how my team usually looks at these exhibits and creates them. When I look at an exhibit, we usually look at the script first, and we read all the historical content, but we also have to think about how our audience will engage with the exhibit and find little tidbits of facts or things that is particular to the exhibit that we can make into interactive or present it in a different way so that the audience knows fun facts or little details about the exhibit that you just don't read on the text panel. So when we work with the curatorial team, we go back and forth and we ask them any little tidbits or any little extras that they might have in the exhibit. And then we come up with concepts and share them with the team and to get a back and forth. But when we think about exhibits, the main thing we think about is how our visitors will take it in and how to keep it aesthetically pleasing and aesthetically matching our permanent exhibits that we already have in the museum, because we don't want it to look so far off different from what we already do. So this is one concept that we had for the title. We wanted to use the woods because we were thinking about how the 23rd unit were in the woods and they would use sonic deception to project sounds to deter the enemy. So we were using that idea of how to incorporate the woods and deception and how to make the visitor know that everything that they were doing was a lie, but it really looked real. So this was one of the concept ideas for the title panel. We used the graphics, but we didn't use that picture in the back. We actually used that picture in a different area in the gallery. It's on the back wall. But when we see exhibits, this is usually how I'm looking at an exhibit, through floor plans and on the computer digitally before we actually build it out. So this is one of the views for our fake headquarters. We built a fake headquarters because the 23rd would set up fake headquarters to make the enemies think that the Americans had a unit in that area, and they would have fake headquarters and they have really young soldiers dressed up as colonels or high-ranking officials in the army, and they were all fake. They had fake patches, they wore fake uniforms. The whole idea was to deceive everyone around them and keep it going. So the real troops that were invading were probably on the complete opposite side. So to keep the deception going, we created a fake headquarters and we made it look like it was a little worn from a picture that we received from the curatorial staff. And this is another view of it. And in the inside, we also have interactive and a fake, well, a typewriter for the visitor's touch. So this is the scheme for our display cases. We built these to size to hold our artifacts. One thing about this exhibit was made to travel. So when we travel our exhibits, we have to make sure all of the stuff you see, we could pick up, put it in crates and move it to a different location and set it up so it looks exactly the same as it did here, or very similar. So one good thing about these cases, that the vitrines, the part on the top, the clear box on the top fits into the bottom of the case, so we don't have to build two different shipping crates for these display cases, which in the exhibits world is very helpful. So this is the actual title panel that we have. This is the one we agreed on. This is what is out on the floor right now, and everyone seems to like it. This is just another rendering and the font choices and the color scheme that we use. This is how we build out our text panels, because again, this all has to travel. So we built these text panels holders so that the graphics could slide in and also come out so they won't get damaged when they get put in the shipping crates and travel across the country. This is our graphic panels. We try to make them all look somewhat aesthetically the same, but also try to have your eye visually move through the gallery and make it easy to read without having too much text, so it won't be too cumbersome when you're walking through the gallery. This is one of the wall treatments that we did. This is vinyl, which is basically like a big sticker that we stick on the wall and then we just peel it off. So it's very impactful, but also very cost effective for exhibit staff. But this is a picture of one of the inflatable tanks that were made by the real Ghost Army. The ones that we have in the gallery are a little smaller, because the ones that the real Ghost Army used were made to scale the actual size of a real tank. And if you know anything about tanks or planes or artillery, they are not small. But in order for us to fit it in the gallery, we had to size them down just quite a bit. So this is one of the tanks and some graphics that we use next to it. And this is the floor plan. So this is what me and my team work with most of the time before we build anything. We work out everything. We know how much spacing is in between each and every box. We know where we want to place everything. We know the order of everything that it's going in. And this helps my team. It also helps the collections team when they're putting in the artifacts. And it also helps our educators when they're building tours, and our volunteers also, because they could walk through and get a better idea of the flow of the exhibit before the visitors get a chance to see everything. So me and my team work with this for months before we build anything. And this is another view of that. And if you look in the back, that's where the woods are. We use that graphic to simulate you're in the woods and you're part of the deception of the 23rd. And the two inflatables, this is an early rendering, but we positioned everything just a little bit differently because we always want to meet our ADA standards, which we have to make sure that we can get strollers through and wheelchairs through all through the gallery without any impediments. So we tweaked it a little bit. But one fun fact about the inflatables, they were made by a company that makes the inflatables for the Macy's Day Parade, Thanksgiving Day Parade. So it's very durable material. The real Ghost Army didn't have that kind of material. They wasn't that lucky. And when they had to repair their inflatables, they had to use like bubble gum to make it work. So luckily I don't have to do that. So, but this is a concept that we had, but it's mostly for spacing because we know how much space we need. And then this is a prototype of our interactive that we had on the wall that displayed the sonic deception, and it showed how the 23rd used recordings to project different sounds going on in the camp while they were out in the field. None of it was really happening. They would just play it on a wire recorder all the time. And this interactive showed the different sounds that they would use. It was like a campsite where guys were just sitting around, like tanks moving through the forest or airplanes flying over. It was all that kind of sound deception going on. This is an interactive concept that we came up with, and this is what it looks like. And if you come to the museum, you'll see this on the wall. And then this is our Morse code station, because they will also use Morse code and send out fake signals to hope that the enemy would pick up on the signal and read it and get the wrong messages. So this is one thing that they did. And we also put this in our fake headquarters, and we also have a Morse code chart so people could touch it. Because once you touch the little knob, it lights up and you could hear the different, I guess, sounds that the machine makes. So you could send out a fake code. This is what it looked like. And that's the end of that. But if you had a chance to see the exhibit, came out really well. We were very happy with the way everything turned out. COVID messed us up a little bit because all of our interactives are touch and hands-on. So we had to cut a lot of that out because our oral histories were on touch screens. We had a magnet board for kids to play with that showed how the 23rd created fake patches because the quartermaster didn't have enough patches to actually send them, so they would make their own and put them on their uniforms. So we thought that would be a cool idea for the kids to use magnets as puzzle pieces to try to put them together. In our fake headquarters, we had a typewriter and we have the Morse code station. Also very hands-on, sonic deception, we push the buttons. So COVID made our exhibit a little not as hands-on as we liked it to be, as we planned it to be, but I think it still came out very well. And in the video, you'll see all the things that I just described.
Hi, I'm Larry Decuers. I'm one of the curators at the National WWII Museum, and we're inside our latest special exhibit, the Ghost Army, Combat Con Men of World War II. So the Ghost Army, also known as the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, was a unit solely devoted to deceiving the enemy into believing that actual tanks were there instead of these rubber inflatable tanks. So the Ghost Army was made up of 4 separate elements. Now each of these elements had their own specialty: visual deception, sonic deception, fake radio traffic, and then special effects, which were things like impersonating generals or high-ranking officers and putting fake unit patches on and things of that nature. So the Camouflage Engineer Battalion, they were responsible for these visual effects like you see here with this M7 Priest. Now, the way these things were constructed during the war was these vehicles would be made up of a rubber inflatable frame, and then a tarp was put over them with all the convincing markings you see here. Now, the idea behind that inflatable frame was that if a piece of shrapnel hit one of these vehicles, they wouldn't deflate like an empty balloon. Now, over here you see one of our radios. Now, the signals company attached to the Ghost Army, these were highly skilled Morse code operators and radio operators recruited from all over the Army. These men were so skilled at Morse code, they can impersonate other Morse code operators. So this went a long way into making the deception convincing for German signals intercepts. So to the trained ear, a Morse code handle is like a fingerprint. Also in this case, we have a generator. Now, the power needs for the 23rd would have been very great to power the giant speakers and to power the air compressors to inflate these vehicles. So lots of these portable generators were part of the equipment of the Ghost Army. Now, when a generator went down or an air compressor went down, they carried trusty old bicycle pumps to inflate these things. So you can imagine blowing up your kid's raft. This would take a long time with a bicycle pump. So another element of the Ghost Army was the sonic deception. Now, in order for these inflatable tanks to appear convincing to the ear, they have to sound like tanks. So they did that with these big 500-pound speakers on the backs of half-tracks. Now, before the sonic unit shipped overseas, every conceivable Army sound was recorded at Fort Knox, Kentucky. Tanks going uphill, tanks going downhill, the sound of pontoon bridges being constructed. Even dialogue was recorded. Sergeants telling soldiers to put that cigarette out and things of that nature. So all these were recorded on giant records and then mixed to make multi-track recordings. So these were tailor-made for whatever the deception the Ghost Army may be trying to pull off. And those multi-track recordings were placed on this wire player here. Because a needle scratching on a record would probably ruin the whole deception, those recordings were put on a wire recorder. So this is the predecessor to magnetic tape. So in each of these cartridges, I think there's about half a mile of copper wire. And recorded on that wire, I think the recording time is maybe about 30 minutes. So this is what the Ghost Army used in the field. And of course, this wouldn't skip. So that's the big reason why they use this wire recorder. Another element of the deceptions that made them so convincing were what members of the Ghost Army called special effects. Now, special effects were fake unit patches, fake bumper markings on their vehicles. They even impersonated officers, and the idea was they would send soldiers into these towns for the benefit of German collaborators or spies that had been left behind, and these guys wore these fake unit patches and they talked loose. All this was to convince German sympathizers or German spies that the real unit was indeed there, when after all it was just inflatable vehicles that were there. Anytime there was downtime for the soldiers of the Ghost Army, with so many artists and talented people in their ranks, everybody pulled out a sketchbook every time they had a chance. For one soldier, Jack Macy, he drew caricatures of all his fellow soldiers. And the unit pooled their money together and had a book printed in Luxembourg City called UNKP. And it was caricatures of every guy in the unit. Now, there were a lot of soldiers who went on to become very famous from the Ghost Army. One of those was fashion designer Bill Blass. You probably remember him from the 80s. Very famous, very well-known fashion designer. But the Ghost Army, during their time in Europe, they conducted over 20 successful deceptions. Their biggest was Operation Viersen in March 1945. And these 1,100 men were able to convince the German army that they were indeed two infantry divisions that were preparing to cross the Rhine River. This deception was the Ghost Army's most successful operation of the war. They employed 600 inflatable vehicles and convinced the German forces that they were 2 infantry divisions preparing to cross the Rhine River. This drew German forces away from the actual river crossing that was occurring further downriver. So just this one operation, the Ghost Army proved their worth, and they were big contributors to Allied victory in Europe in World War II. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this brief mini tour of the Ghost Army exhibit at the National World War II Museum, and I hope to see you here. The museum is open and the exhibit does run through the first of the year. Thanks for watching.
Okay, so Jenny, we do have a few questions here in the Q&A, and one of the questions is, where can we find a travel schedule for this exhibition, and are there any stops in New York City?
Well, the travel schedule will be put on the website soon. We have it under our travel and exhibits page on the website at WWII Museum.org. We're still working on the travel schedule right now. We're only scheduled to go to Nevada and to Chicago right now, not in New York yet, hopefully.
And how long is the Ghost Army exhibit open here at the National World War II
It'll
Museum?
close in January, right after the holidays.
Fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
What was your favorite part, of designing this exhibit?
Making the fake headquarters was pretty cool because we had to design that to travel. So all those walls come apart in sections, and our fabricators did a really good job with it because we worked off a black and white photo. So we didn't really know what the outside really looked like. We were just working off of what we got from the curatorial team. But I think it came out really cool. It's really heavy, but it's really cool.
Another question that has come up is, do any of the real inflatable vehicles still exist?
Maybe, I'm not sure. We could find out.
Well, since it probably wasn't made of the same sturdy material that you were using.
It's made of like rubbery material. So they probably have some, maybe somewhere in the archive or in the Ghost Army Legacy Foundation, they probably have one.
And are the 2 inflatables that are currently up in the exhibit, are those the only 2 inflatables that you have for the exhibit?
No, we also have a plane, which is really cool and it's really big, but it was too big to fit in the gallery. So we couldn't put the plane and the artillery and the tank in there like we wanted to, but the traveling version will have a plane. So if the space is big enough, we could put the plane, the tank and the artillery on display.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like we have a few more questions here. One of the questions was about the sources of information into creating the exhibit. What kind of sources did you use? I know curatorial has their own sources that they used as well, but
most of when we make exhibits, we get most of our information from our curatorial team, our collections team. But for this exhibit, we also work with Rick Beyer, who is the head of the Ghost Army Legacy Project. And he was a special consultant that helped us with the exhibit. And he helped us with the script, and he told us some things that helped us with the design concepts. So he was really big help, and he's still very, very helpful and very, very nice and always willing to participate if we ask him for anything.
Another question that has come in is that they understand that the work of the Ghost Army was classified for many years, and they were wondering if any of their talents have ever appeared in any movies. I know that the Ghost Army, there is a documentary, so if you are interested in actually seeing some of the talented men who worked in the Ghost Army, folks can check that out. That is one of the questions that came up. A question about, do you know when it will be in Chicago, the exhibit?
It's we're still working on the contract, but it's probably going to be the fall of 2022.
Okay, fantastic. There were a few, one of the questions was how many soldiers were killed in action with the Ghost Army. I know that there was a few that were killed in action, but I'm not for sure how many, so FYI.
Either.
I just don't know. And let me see. We have some other questions. All right, I think that is it for our questions. Let me just double check. But I think that is it for our questions here. The Ghost Army exhibit again is on view at the National World War II Museum until January, and then it'll be traveling. To find out more information about the Ghost Army itself, you can check out our website at www.nationalww2museum.org. You can also check out some other talks that have happened at the museum. We have one with Rick Beyer from just a few months ago. It is on our YouTube page as well as on our Facebook page. You can check that out. It was an interview between Larry Decuers and Rick Beyer, as well as a previous Ghost Army talk that was given by James Lynn, one of our curators. And then also you can check out our opening of that exhibit where Rick Byers was our keynote speaker for that particular program. So we do invite you to check that out as well. So we want to thank you, Jenney, for taking time with us today to talk about you and your team's experience in creating the Ghost Army exhibit. And we welcome you all to come down and see us when it is safe for you to do so here at the National World War II Museum, and definitely check out the traveling exhibit calendar as well. We would also like to thank our sponsor, AARP Louisiana, again, for sponsoring this program today, and thank you all for joining us. And we will see you next time.